And so we're walking from the museum to our hotel room, where this we were going to put this skull up in the hotel room, and we're walking across the street, and Paul Sereno was
Oh my
walking across
God.
the street at the same time. Now, you know the similarity between Giganotosaurus and
In Carcharodontosaurus, and he was
Carcharodontosaurus
describing Carcharodontosaurus in
at the
'96.
same time.
Oh my God. All right, we're gonna let up LA listing photography. Hello, welcome.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine.
I'm so awesome. I came across your live.
I'm glad you did. Thank you.
Um, so I'm older. I'm going to be 59 this year, and I was a newspaper photographer in LA for a long time. And so the story I wanted to tell you happened around, I don't know, 92 maybe, but they had just, well, it had to be after that because it was when they were opening the ride at Universal Studios, the Jurassic Park ride.
It's probably like 93, 94.
Yeah, around 94 probably. Maybe even 90. Yeah, 94.
Mm-hmm.
Or no. Well, anyway, it was around that time.
Yeah.
I was at Universal.
Oh, you muted yourself there.
I ran into a guy who was doing like PR stuff there that I had known from when I was a child. I'd always loved dinosaurs from when I was, in the crib till now. My
Yeah, me
house.
too.
Anyway, so Don Lessem. I don't know if you know who Don Lessem is. We used to
Oh,
call him Dino
I know
Don. Dino
Don.
Don
Yeah.
Lessem. Yeah, he was there, and I used to be when I was a kid. I was a member of the Dino Society. I don't know if you remember that. And that was Don. That was Don Lessem's. That was Don Lessem's gig. He used to put stuff in Scholastic magazine for
Hmm.
the Dino Society. Anyway, I met him there and I recognized him and I told him that I had been a member of the Dino Society and we had a great time together and like he hadn't talked to anybody who remembered that for a while. And he told me about this woman who was a preparator in LA, a private preparator. She used to work for the Natural History Museum here in LA,
Hmm.
and she had just received some bones that she was working on from Argentina, from Patagonia,
Oh,
and that I should go and check this out. It would make a great story. And I was like, hell yeah! I went and met Mary O'Donnell, and Mary O'Donnell had gotten. She was working with God, what was his name now? It was Giganotosaurus,
yeah.
and it was
Was
God.
it Rodolfo
Rudolfo
Curry?
Correa. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Rudolfo
yeah.
Correa. Yeah, Rudolfo Correa and Phil Curry.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh my gosh.
so I started working on this story when they were still removing Matrix from Giganotosaurus, and so Mary's preparation was after they had removed the Matrix and scanned the bone and and done all this stuff, they would reshape it because it was crushed.
Mhm.
It was not in very good shape.
Yeah.
There was a lot of it. I think that first Giganotosaurus example was like 85% complete.
Hmm.
So I worked on that and went through this thing for like a year while they were doing this preparation on Giganotosaurus until they finally had created a skull. And the skull was massive. I think it was like 3 meters.
It is a huge animal.
Yeah, it was enormous, and they had great examples of teeth and all this. But one of the things that was missing from the skull was the quadrate jugal
Hmm.
in the back of the skull.
Yeah, like the under part of the eye socket. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so okay, now we're moving on to the Society of Paleovertebrate. Wait, Society of Vertebrate Paleontology's
I
annual.
have their sticker on the back of my laptop in front of me.
Awesome. So this was, I think, 95.
Yeah.
The annual meeting in New York. This one was in New York. So I traveled with them with this skull to New York, and they one of the conditions that they had made while I was doing the story was I couldn't publish anything until they had published their paper.
Yeah, that's how it is. That's how it
Yeah,
is doing science
and I
journalism.
agreed.
Everybody's
No
super
problem.
tight about that.
Yeah. So we took the skull before they had written their paper, but they wanted uh, to show it to certain you know paleontologists who had heard of it and were interested.
Mhm.
And so we're walking from our where we got from the museum to our hotel room, where this we were going to put this skull up in the hotel room, and we're walking across the street, and Paul Sereno was
Oh my
walking across
god.
the street at the same time. Now, you know the similarity between Giganotosaurus and
In
Cargar
Carcharodontosaurus, and he was
that's
describing Carcharodontosaurus in
at the
'96.
same time.
Oh my god.
It was wild. So one of the but he hadn't, there was no example of Carcharodontosaurus's skull at that point.
Yeah.
And he saw what Mary and Rodolfo and Phil had done with Giganotosaurus' skull, especially the back end, where they had postulated the shape of the quadrate jugal, which extended the back of Giganotosaurus's skull a little wildly. You know, not I'm not going to say they did it to extend the length of it for any kind of record of meat-eating dinosaurs or anything, but there you go. There you go. What was missing on the Carcharodontosaurus' skull at that
Yeah, they
time?
have the quadratojugal on
They had the
the.
quadratic, but they didn't have the nasal.
Yeah.
So Carcharodontosaurus ended up having this dog snout of a nasal in the front end of it, and Giganotosaurus had this wild quadrate jugal in the back. So they just they stretched it from one end to the other. Probably was more similar than they ended up being.
Um, yeah, and that it's actually really interesting that you specifically mentioned the nasal of Carcharodontosaurus because there was just a paper published like this week that was I don't know if you heard about this, but the original um, material of Carcharodontosaurus that was found in 1936 by Ernst Stromer included a nasal, and
Wow.
there were some photographs of that were taken, and then they were just found that were more detailed, and they redescribed it in association with some other Carcharodontosaurus material as a new species that's now called Temeryraptor.
Oh, was that the sample that was destroyed in like World War
Yeah,
II or something?
it was
Yeah.
destroyed in World War II.
Wow.
But now it's been redescribed as the type of Temeryraptor, which is a new species, which is super interesting. Um,
So, but this is the personal part of that story.
it's
I
a very
had
cool story. Thank you so much for sharing.
I had kept all everything to myself. I told my editor, my photo editor, that I was working on this so I could have time to work on it. I traveled with it, and I had been working on it for over a year at this point. Um, After New York, after when we came back and they were ready to publish their paper, they still hadn't published their paper. I at that point recruited a reporter to write the text for this story that we were going to write. And I told her, and I tried to explain to her how ridiculously awesome this story could be, because it was also going to coincide with The Lost World, with
Yeah.
Jurassic Park, The Lost World. And she was excited about it. She went and talked to Marion, and it could have been like a new Bone Wars. I mean, the two dinosaurs could have anyway.
Dinosaurs in the '90s were something
Yeah.
else.
Yeah, it
'90s
was awesome. And so during that
peak
trip too,
dinosaur culture.
I met so many. I mean, I met Jack Horner. We and Bill Curry, Jack Horner, and Rodolfo and I uh, had dinner at that pizza place this in New York. It was the worst pizza ever, but the beer was good. and those guys could drink.
I'm sure.
I also these paleontologists were coming in and out of our hotel room to see this skull that they had mounted, and Robert Backer came into the room, and
Oh my god.
yeah, it was wild. It was wild. I mean, anyway, so before they published their paper, this reporter that I had recruited told her editor about this story that I had given to her about, and I told her, don't say anything to your editors. She did.
Oh, you're kidding.
That editor, her, editor that she had told the desk, the city desk, about this story, and they were like, "Oh, cool, let's run it this weekend to fill a hole."
Oh,
So, and I said, I can't do this. I can't use anything that I've shot this last entire year because I had agreed with them that I wouldn't publish anything of Giganotosaurus until they published their paper. They didn't care. They wanted the story about Mary. So I went and took pictures an afternoon of Mary and her shop, and that was it. None of the stuff that I shot or any of the time that I spent that year ever made it anywhere. I have stacks of photos and stuff that no one's ever seen. And
wow.
then, but it was personally, it was awesome for me. I have the memories of it and all, and I got to meet uh, a bunch of people that I had known, paleo artists, and yeah, it was really
That's
a great time.
incredible. Wow.
But
Well, thank you for sharing. I feel very deeply like privileged that you came to my space to talk about that.
yeah, I
That's
don't think I've ever told anyone on that story about um, that
that's
time.
really amazing.
Yeah, I
Wow.
wish I had. I wish I could. I don't know. Maybe one day I'll get it published somewhere. But those
You
pictures
better
are.
let me know if you do, because I'll read that a thousand
Yeah,
times over.
yeah. There was, and then the last thing I did with them was in Philadelphia, the first mount that they had placed in the U.S. I think it was the first mount in the world of Giganotosaurus at the Philadelphia Science Academy.
The Academy of Natural Sciences.
Yeah, and
Yep.
then there was a Discovery Channel thing that they did, and Phil Curry was there. It was funny because he was doing like these measurements and stuff that were crazy off because they mounted the vertebrae with no. I mean, if you look at that mount, there was just like the vertebrae were just like smashed together.
Yeah. No, the Giganotosaurus isn't at the ANS anymore. We replaced it with an Elasmosaurus a little while ago, unfortunately.
Really?
Yeah, because that was discovered by a person who worked out of the museum, and they were doing something on him. Because that's where Edward Drinker Cope was. But I
Wow.
don't know if we still have it. But I would be very happy if it was put up again. It's a really really cool cast.
Yeah. One of the pictures that I remember, oh, one of the pictures though after that was published in Life magazine, and that was contentious too with Paul Sereno. I did that in the studio at the Daily News. I brought that skull into the Daily News and shot it in the studio. And Mary had given me a Homo habilis skull, so I put this Homo habilis skull next to the Giganotosaurus skull to show scale. 2 months after that, uh, National Geographic had a photograph of Giganotosaurus, or not, I'm sorry, Carcharodontosaurus skull with a human
With
skull next to
and
it for
that's the one with
scale.
Paul Sereno in it.
Yeah, dude, that was
Yeah.
my photo. Anyway, another picture that I did that I love, that I have framed in my office, is of Mary and Maria, who was a sculptor that Rudolfo brought up from Argentina with him to do this, to help with this preparation. It was of the top end of the skull, and they were sitting in it.
Oh,
It was that big. It was so cool.
yeah. Um, there are a few fossil specimens in the world that are like on like real life celebrities, but they're made of rock.
Yeah.
And it's always so cool when you get to see something like that, like the original Giganotosaurus. Um,
Yeah.
the ANS for a while we had, and I had the very cool privilege of seeing it. We had the original Tiktaalik from Nunavut, um, and that was one of the coolest specimens that I'd ever
Wow.
seen.
Yeah.
Um, some of this stuff is just so ancient and beautiful. I think dinosaurs, for me, they have such like an emotional component too. It's really amazing.
Yeah. No, and all those, it's always been that way for me too. I mean, I can't explain it. My ex-wife one time asked me, how many, how much of your day do you think is taken up by thinking of dinosaurs? And I think I remember telling her probably a lot.
Yeah, it's there's not much better to think about. I'll tell you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks for having me, and
Thanks so much for coming
thanks for
on.
thanks for having the live. It's awesome. I love.
Yeah,
I've been learning stuff from you too.
you're a really great guest. Thank you so much for sharing your story. That
All
was
right.
really
Have a great
amazing.
day.
Yeah, you also have a great day. Now that was something. Wow. Wow.